This session is going to be concerned with three American writers of considerable note, Fitzgerald, Hemingway, and of course William Faulkner. All three of these men were alcoholics. One died from suicide, Hemingway. Another died from alcohol poisoning, Faulkner, at the ripe young age of 62. And Fitzgerald, I'm not sure about Fitzgerald. Unlike the other two, I haven't read his biography. But he he certainly liked to drink. He drank a lot, and he celebrated the jazz age, as everyone knows in his stories. Featured in this Saturday Evening Post, and he was paid top dollar for his stories. Top dollar. Probably wrote more stories than, well, I don't know, Hemingway wrote his share, of course, so did Faulkner. Faulkner wrote stories also published in the Saturday Evening Post and other venues to earn his living while he wrote his novels. And he even wrote a few screenplays where he stayed in Hollywood. Wrote a screenplay for his novel Intruder in the Dust. Wrote another one for The Sound and the Fury. And perhaps another one I don't remember. During an interview with a Paris Review writer, well, and this was back in the early 50s, I believe. I quoted it in my journal a long time ago. Faulkner said that his tools of the trade, so to speak, were whiskey, tobacco, paper, and pencil. That's what he said. Of course, he said a lot of other rather interesting things, and probably his most famous remark is, the past is not dead, it's not even past. Something like that. I don't know if I got it verbatim. It's close. So all three of these writers were, young men, relatively speaking, in the 1920s. Rather, well, that was 100 years ago now, wasn't it? Well, who's writing today? Well, you've got this Coates fellow, he's black, and he's Pulitzer Prize winner, very interesting author. Several black authors have come to the fore. And in the 50s, of course, there was Ralph Ellison and James Baldwin, and who was it that wrote Native Son? I don't know. Anyway, there were some women, black women literary authors. Anne Perry, I read her novel published back in the mid-50s recently, titled The Street. Very interesting book, very absorbing, very revealing. I had been introduced to Ralph Ellison when I took a class in college when I was 19, I think. The Invisible Man. And subsequently, posthumously, I believe, Ellison's book, June 19th, or Juneteenth rather, was published, which I have not read, but I would like to. There's so much to read, you see. You can't read everything. No one can. And so you make selections. And those selections, if you're an aspiring author, will determine essentially your style, those selections. And they might have been made years ago, or they might have been made recently. It all depends on your character and your, shall we say, determination and so on. Because this business of writing can take years, decades, for one person to finally acquire the noteworthy status of having been published. I'll give you a good example. We'll say Saramago, a Nobel Prize winner in literature. He lived in Portugal and he spent the golden years of his life, shall we say, in some village along the coast of the Canary Islands, which is off the coast of Spain or Portugal. Anyway, he was fluent in English and Spanish and Portuguese and probably a few other languages as well. Italian, I wouldn't be surprised. And a socialist. He wrote Blindness, which was made into a film starring Julianne Moore. Saramago was probably the last novelist that I ever became infatuated by. Prior to that, it was, I suppose, Cortázar from Argentina originally. He lived in Paris most of his adult life. Back in the 50s and 60s. Blow Up was one of his, of course, that wasn't the title of his original story. Forget what it was, but an Italian film director who made this story into a movie, Blow Up. And I suppose Cortázar earned a good living as a writer. Most writers do not. Most writers suffer from lack of money, pecuniary,